What was supposed to be a quiet, controlled conversation turned into an emotional firestorm that nobody, and I mean nobody, was ready for. Because when Michael finally spoke up and hinted at the truth about Ashley's real mother, Towanda didn't just react, she erupted. Voices were raised, faces went cold, and the room instantly felt like decades of buried secrets had just been dragged into the light. Fans watching in real time swear you could feel the shift. 1 second it was tense but manageable. The next, Towanda was standing her ground, visibly shaken, accusing Michael of crossing a line that should have never been touched. Her voice cracked between anger and disbelief as she fired back, making it clear this wasn't just gossip. This was personal, painful, and deeply rooted in family wounds that never healed. What made it even worse? This wasn't coming from a stranger or a blogger. This was coming from inside the family, and once those words were out, there was no taking them back. Social media exploded instantly. Fans were split down the middle, some asking, "Why now?" Others saying, "We knew something was off." Old clips resurfaced. Past arguments suddenly made sense, and people started realizing this revelation might explain years of tension that never quite added up. Towanda's reaction wasn't just anger, it was protection, betrayal, and heartbreak colliding all at once. Because if what Michael revealed is even partially true, then the entire family narrative shifts. Relationships change. Loyalties get questioned. And the biggest question of all hangs in the air like a threat. Why was this secret kept? And why was it exposed now? It all kicked off with a moment nobody was ready for, and the energy in the room shifted so fast you could almost feel the temperature drop. 1 second it was tense but controlled. The next second it felt like a long-buried secret had been dragged into the light without permission. Michael leaned in, his tone calm but loaded, and said something that stopped everyone cold. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't hesitate. He simply revealed what he claimed was the truth about Ashley's real mother, and in that instant, everything detonated. Towanda's reaction was immediate and visceral. Her posture changed, her eyes flashed, and you could see years of restraint snap all at once. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't shock alone. This was rage mixed with betrayal. Insiders say Towanda had always feared this moment, not because the truth itself was so explosive, but because of who was choosing to tell it, how it was being told, and who was being forced to absorb the fallout. She didn't just hear a revelation, she heard a boundary being crossed. Sources close to the family say this topic has been the ultimate third rail for decades. Mentioned in whispers, danced around in half sentences, and quickly shut down whenever curiosity got too close. According to those insiders, there was an unspoken agreement that whatever complexities surrounded Ashley's parentage were not to be unpacked publicly, especially not in a way that could cause her pain or confusion. Michael breaking that silence wasn't just unexpected, it was perceived as a calculated move. Towanda allegedly fired back almost instantly, demanding to know why he would choose this moment, this setting, and this audience. Her voice reportedly trembled, not from uncertainty, but from the weight of knowing exactly what kind of storm this revelation could unleash. People in the room say she accused Michael of using truth as a weapon instead of a responsibility. That accusation landed hard because it suggested this wasn't about honesty, it was about control. As the confrontation escalated, Towanda reportedly began pulling from memory moments that suddenly made sense in the worst way. Awkward silences, conversations that ended abruptly, family decisions that were explained vaguely or not at all. To her, Michael's statement didn't open a door, it ripped the hinges off. And once that happened, there was no pretending this was just another disagreement. This was about rewriting family history in real time. What fans didn't see immediately, but insiders later claimed, was that Towanda wasn't only reacting for herself. She was reacting for Ashley. According to people close to Towanda, her biggest fear has always been that Ashley would one day find out something deeply personal in the most public, chaotic way possible. And in that moment, it felt like that fear had just become reality. Towanda allegedly shouted that Ashley deserved protection, not headlines, and that certain truths require care, timing, and consent, not shock value. Meanwhile, Michael reportedly stood his ground. He didn't backtrack. He didn't soften his wording. That, more than anything, is what sent Towanda over the edge. To her, his refusal to walk it back felt like confirmation that this wasn't accidental. Some insiders even claimed Towanda accused him of holding on to this information for years, only to release it when it suited him. Whether that's true or not, the accusation itself reveals how deep the mistrust runs. Social media, of course, didn't wait for clarity. Within minutes of the clip surfacing, timelines were flooded with speculation. Fans began digging through old interviews, pausing scenes from past appearances, and reposting moments that suddenly felt loaded with subtext. Comments ranged from, "I always knew something was off," to, "This should have never been said out loud." The internet split into camps almost instantly, those who believed Michael was finally telling the truth, and those who believed he had no right to tell it at all. What made the situation even more volatile was the lack of immediate clarification. No official statements, no unified response, just fragments of reactions and growing theories. Some fans began speculating about why this secret was protected for so long. Others questioned who else in the family knew. And a few started asking the most dangerous question of all: if this was hidden, what else was? Towanda, according to multiple accounts, wasn't done once the initial outburst ended. Behind the scenes, she allegedly continued pushing back, accusing Michael of destabilizing an already fragile family dynamic. She reportedly reminded him of past conflicts that never healed, suggesting this revelation poured gasoline on wounds that were barely scabbed over. To Towanda, this wasn't about winning an argument, it was about survival of what little unity remained. Insiders say this confrontation reopened old power struggles within the family. Who controls the narrative? Who decides what's shared and what's protected? Who gets to speak, and who is expected to absorb the consequences in silence? Towanda's anger, according to those close to her, was rooted in the belief that Michael once again positioned himself as the authority over a story that affects multiple lives, not just his own. As clips continued circulating, fans began noticing something else: Ashley's silence. No posts, no reactions, no visible response. That silence became its own source of tension, with supporters expressing concern and critics speculating wildly. Some fans urged people to stop theorizing altogether, pointing out that real people were at the center of this chaos. Others, however, couldn't look away, convinced they were witnessing the unraveling of a long-constructed narrative. By the end of the day, one thing was undeniable. This wasn't a moment that could be walked back with a quick apology or a vague explanation. Towanda's reaction had already signaled that lines were crossed and trust was damaged. And according to insiders, this confrontation was only the beginning. There are claims that follow-up conversations happened off-camera that were even more intense, with accusations flying about manipulation, loyalty, and who has been silently carrying the weight of this secret all these years. What makes this situation so explosive isn't just the revelation itself. It's the implication that the family has been operating under a carefully managed version of reality. And when that version cracks, everyone feels exposed. Towanda's anger wasn't just about what was said. It was about what might come next. Because if this truth is out, then the next one could be even harder to contain. As fans continue to debate and clips continue to resurface, the question isn't whether this changes the family dynamic. It already has. The real question is whether this revelation was the end of the secrecy, or just the first domino to fall. And judging by the way Towanda went off, it's clear she knows something most people don't. Something that, if spoken out loud, could turn the situation from shocking to irreversible. The fallout didn't slow down after that first explosive moment, it multiplied. Behind the scenes, the family atmosphere reportedly turned ice cold, the kind of silence that screams louder than any argument. Insiders say Towanda didn't just cool off and move on. She doubled down. According to people close to the situation, she felt cornered, not just by Michael's words, but by the way the narrative was already being hijacked online before she even had a chance to process it privately. What made things worse was the alleged follow-up conversation that happened off-camera. Sources claim Towanda confronted Michael again, this time without an audience, and the tone shifted from outrage to something far more dangerous: resentment. She reportedly questioned his motives point-blank, asking why he chose disclosure over discretion, exposure over protection. The implication was clear. She believed this wasn't about truth-telling, but about reclaiming power in a family where power has always been contested. According to insiders, Michael didn't deny knowing how explosive the information would be. Instead, he allegedly defended himself by saying the truth had been mismanaged for too long. That response only deepened the fracture. Towanda reportedly snapped back that some truths aren't meant to be managed at all, they're meant to be guarded. And in her mind, Ashley was the one now paying the price for a decision she didn't consent to. As this private confrontation was unfolding, the internet was doing what it does best, speculating at full speed. Old family photos began circulating, with fans zooming in on faces, comparing features, creating side-by-side collages like amateur detectives. Comment sections became war zones, with some accusing Towanda of hiding something and others defending her fiercely, arguing that protecting a child's emotional safety isn't deception, it's love. Emotions ran high, and the family was left divided not just internally, but publicly. What truly escalated the situation was a leaked audio clip that began making the rounds in fan circles. Its authenticity hasn't been confirmed, but insiders claim it captured a heated exchange where Towanda could be heard saying, "You don't get to rewrite her life because you're tired of carrying a secret." That single line, whether real or not, poured gasoline on the fire. Fans were shocked, theories exploded, and suddenly the conversation shifted from what was revealed to why it had been buried in the first place. At the same time, whispers began circulating about how long Towanda had known. Some claimed she was aware of the truth for years and actively helped keep it quiet. Others argued she was brought into the loop later, forced into an impossible position where any choice would cause damage. Friends of Towanda insist the latter is closer to reality, saying she's been carrying emotional weight that was never hers to begin with. Meanwhile, Ashley's name continued trending, despite her complete silence. That silence became a mirror, reflecting whatever narrative people wanted to project. To some, it looked like shock. To others, it looked like confirmation. But according to sources close to Ashley, she was blindsided and deeply hurt, not just by the revelation, but by how quickly strangers felt entitled to dissect her identity. Towanda, reportedly aware of this impact, became even more furious as the hours passed. Insiders say Towanda began making calls, not to gossip outlets but to family members. The message was consistent: this needed to stop. She allegedly warned that if the speculation continued unchecked, permanent damage would be done. That urgency suggests she knows the story is more layered than what's currently circulating, and that partial truths could be more harmful than silence. Michael, on the other hand, reportedly felt emboldened by the response. According to people close to him, he believed the reaction proved his point, that the family had been living inside a fragile illusion for too long. That belief put him on a collision course with Towanda, because from her perspective, the illusion wasn't about denial. It was about stability. And now, that stability was crumbling in real time. The tension spilled over when a second alleged leak surfaced, screenshots of a group message, where family members debated whether to issue a statement. In those messages, Towanda was allegedly adamant that no clarification should be released until Ashley herself was ready. Others reportedly pushed for damage control, worried about public perception. That disagreement revealed a deeper rift. Whose comfort mattered most, the family's or Ashley's? Fans watching from the outside felt the shift immediately. This no longer looked like a single argument. It looked like a system breaking down. Every new rumor, every reposted clip, every speculative thread widened the cracks. Some fans began expressing sympathy for Towanda, saying her anger made sense given the circumstances. Others accused her of gatekeeping the truth. The divide grew sharper by the hour. What's most telling, according to insiders, is that Towanda hasn't denied the revelation outright. Her outrage hasn't been about falsehood. It's been about timing, delivery, and consequence. That distinction matters. It suggests the issue isn't whether the truth exists, but whether it was ever meant to exist publicly. And once that door is opened, it can't be closed again. Behind closed doors, sources claim Towanda issued a warning that shocked even those closest to her. She allegedly said that if this continued, more buried history could come out, history that would force everyone involved to confront uncomfortable realities. That statement landed like a threat, not because it was loud, but because it was calm. And calm warnings are often the most serious. As the day ended, the family remained fractured, fans remained divided, and Ashley remained silent. But one thing was clear: this wasn't just about who told the truth. It was about who gets to decide when a life-altering truth becomes public property. And with tensions this high, it's becoming obvious that someone else may be ready to speak. Someone who could change the entire narrative with just a few words. Because if Towanda's reaction tells us anything, it's that the full story hasn't been told yet. And when it is, it may explain why this secret was protected for so long, and why its exposure feels less like liberation and more like fallout waiting to get worse. By the time the third wave of fallout hit, it was clear this situation had moved beyond a single revelation and into full-blown family rupture. According to insiders, Towanda's patience was officially gone. What started as outrage had hardened into resolve. People close to her say she reached a point where she stopped reacting emotionally and started thinking strategically. And that shift scared everyone involved far more than her initial blow-up. Behind the scenes, Towanda allegedly requested a private sit-down with key family members, excluding Michael. That alone sent shockwaves. The message was unmistakable. This was no longer a disagreement to be hashed out casually. It was a reckoning. Sources say she laid everything out in that meeting, not just her anger, but the long history of emotional labor she felt she'd been forced to carry quietly. She reportedly said that protecting Ashley had come at a personal cost she never spoke about, and now that cost was being dismissed like it meant nothing. What truly stunned those present was when Towanda allegedly revealed that this wasn't the first time Michael had threatened to clear the air. According to insiders, there had been previous moments, years ago, where he hinted at exposing the truth during arguments. Each time, the family scrambled to calm things down, choosing silence over chaos. Towanda reportedly said that pattern proved this wasn't a spontaneous act of honesty, it was leverage finally being used. As word of this closed-door meeting leaked, fan reactions intensified. Social media erupted with debates over morality versus responsibility. Some argued that secrets like this always explode eventually, and that Michael was wrong for waiting so long. Others insisted that timing matters, especially when a young person's identity is involved. The phrase "truth without care is cruelty" began trending alongside Ashley's name, showing just how emotionally charged the conversation had become. Then came the moment no one expected. A distant family associate, someone who hadn't spoken publicly before, allegedly began hinting online that Towanda wasn't acting alone all these years. Cryptic posts suggested that decisions around Ashley's upbringing were made collectively, not unilaterally. Those posts didn't accuse, but they reframed the story in a dangerous way. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't about one person keeping a secret. It was about a system of silence. Towanda reportedly saw those posts as a direct threat. Sources claim she was furious not just because of what was being implied, but because the conversation was drifting further away from Ashley's well-being and deeper into public spectacle. Insiders say Towanda felt the family was losing control of the narrative completely. And once that happens, reputations aren't the only casualties, relationships are. At the same time, Michael's stance reportedly grew more rigid. People close to him claim he felt isolated and painted as the villain for finally speaking up. He allegedly told Confidants that he was tired of being portrayed as reckless when, in his mind, he was the only one willing to stop pretending. That mindset only deepened the divide, because Towanda interpreted it as refusal to accept responsibility for the fallout. What shifted everything again was a reported private message sent to Towanda late one night. The contents haven't been confirmed, but insiders claim it referenced, "What happens next if the truth keeps coming out?" That message reportedly pushed Towanda over the edge. According to sources, she interpreted it as confirmation that this revelation was just the beginning, not the end. And if more was coming, she wasn't going to sit quietly and absorb the damage. That's when Towanda allegedly made it clear she was done protecting narratives that no longer protected people. Friends say she began reconsidering years of restraint, questioning whether silence had actually done more harm than good. That internal conflict is what makes this moment so volatile. Towanda isn't just angry at Michael, she's angry at herself for carrying something that ultimately exploded anyway. Fans began noticing a change in Towanda's public demeanor shortly after. Subtle but unmistakable. A sharper tone, less filtering, posts that felt heavier, more deliberate. People started speculating that she was preparing to speak openly, not to expose for shock value, but to reclaim agency over a story that was slipping out of her hands. Meanwhile, Ashley's continued silence remained the emotional center of the storm. Supporters flooded comment sections urging people to back off, reminding everyone that she didn't ask to be the subject of this debate. That pressure only made Towanda more protective. Insiders say she drew a firm line: no interviews, no clarifications, no public statements that didn't prioritize Ashley's comfort above all else. But here's where the tension reaches its breaking point. According to multiple sources, there's at least one person who hasn't spoken yet, someone whose perspective could change everything. someone who knows not just the truth of the revelation, but the context around why it was handled the way it was. And if that person decides to talk, it could validate Towanda's reaction in a way that silences critics overnight, or it could complicate the story beyond repair. That looming possibility is why the family feels like it's holding its breath. Every new post, every subtle move, feels like the calm before another explosion. Towanda's going off wasn't just an emotional outburst. It was a warning flare, a signal that the old rules of silence no longer apply. As fans continue dissecting every angle, one reality is becoming impossible to ignore. This isn't a story with a clean villain and a clean hero. It's a story about choices made under pressure, secrets kept for protection, and the devastating consequences when those secrets are exposed without consent. Towanda's fury comes from knowing that once a truth like this escapes, it doesn't just inform, it transforms. The family may eventually issue statements. Clarifications may come, time may soften some edges, but the damage done in this moment can't be undone, because what was revealed wasn't just information. It was a fracture in trust that had been holding everything together. And if Towanda's reaction tells us anything, it's this. She knows exactly how fragile that trust was. And she knows that whatever happens next will decide whether this family rebuilds on honesty or collapses under the weight of truths that were never meant to be weaponized. If you've made it this far, then you already understand something very important. This story is not just gossip. This is a family legacy cracking in real time, and what happens next could change everything we think we know. Secrets that were buried for decades are no longer staying quiet, and every reaction, every silence, every sudden outburst is pointing toward one unavoidable truth. This saga is far from over. Right now, there are still voices we haven't heard, receipts that haven't surfaced, and emotions simmering just beneath the surface. One wrong move, one unexpected interview, one leaked message, and the entire narrative could flip overnight. Towanda's reaction wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of the most dangerous chapter yet. So if you care about the truth, if you want to understand what's really happening behind the carefully worded statements and social media posts, you cannot step away now. Hit that like button because this story deserves to be seen. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Whose side are you on and why? Your perspective matters more than ever because public opinion is shaping this fallout in real time. And most importantly, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next revelation could come at any moment, and when it does, you don't want to hear about it secondhand. This family drama is evolving by the hour, and the next update may expose motives, alliances, and truths that no one is prepared for. Stay locked in, because the silence won't last forever, and when it breaks, it's going to be explosive.